Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being present today with Mindful Elevation Caribbean. The year 2022 started, and we here again with our discussions that we are going to have on different topics. And I hope that you and your family are doing well. And if like a lot of us, we're not feeling well, I hope you're feeling better soon. So last year we closed it off with our series about mental health and well-being. And for this year, we're going to start with our series about everything related to stress. So, stress plays a role in our lives, and everybody have their own way of dealing with their stress and working on their stress. So, we're going to be talking about all that during this series. So, today we're going to start with our first one, and we have Mrs. Heather here with us, where we're going to kick it off and where we're going to be talking about her personal stress journey. So, welcome, Mrs. Heather. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing so well, thank you. Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you for you as well.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here at the beginning of 2022. That's exciting.
Yes, it is. And thank you for accepting the invitation to be here with us.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. And, stress is such an important topic. And, we want to start the year off well. So it's a really good thing to kind of tackle and clear as much as possible so that we can have the best year possible.
Yes, indeed. I agree completely with you. So, it's very important indeed. And we all have our own way of handling and dealing with it. And so we're going to dive into that. So before we start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I have been a training consultant and coach for in my own business for over 25 years. And I used to travel all around the world um, with businesses, major corporations usually, to deliver their training and to support their teams in coaching. And then, of course, when COVID hit and we couldn't travel and we couldn't run large conferences. So I started an online business during 2022, which wasn't meant to be a business. It was meant to just be me sharing my skills with women to help them uplift their confidence. And the business is now, as it is now, because it's mushroomed into a big movement, and it's called Confidence Through Cabaret. And that's because cabaret is a hobby of mine. I'm a cabaret dancer, and in my part-time life. And I started to notice that the things I was using in business were very similar skill sets to what I was using on stage. And so we use the cabaret analogy to talk about how we build unshakable confidence and how we feel good in our body and how we own space around us.
Mhm. Oh,
So
that is,
fashion now.
yeah, that is, and so great. And especially because you're saying that through cabaret, you taking different aspects of it and trying to help it as well. And also that you're saying that you started something out of a hobby and that now turned indeed into a business. I think a lot of us need to hear this that sometimes you have a hobby that you can turn into a business as well, and that you can get a lot of joy out of it.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of transferable skills in things that we do. And so when I'm working with my clients, I always say start from where you're strong. So start from what you do know, start from what you can do, rather than starting from a place of, I can't do this and I don't know how to do that. And that place of what a lot of us have is an inner critic or an imposter voice, but really to start from where you're strong and what you can do, and then see what you can transfer across into other areas of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. That thing about what you can do and what you are good at, we can actually bring that into whichever stress situation that we're having as well. Instead of thinking that, oh my God, I don't know how to handle or what to do. Indeed, start small, thinking what you're good in and try to go out from there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think, a lot of times it's very overwhelming about what's out of our control. And that is my greatest, strongest life lesson. It's something that I live by, of anything I've come across in terms of understanding self is control the controllables.
Mm-hmm.
We do what we can do, and we work on what influences we have over the things that we don't have total control over. And my journey has been a very testing one, trying one. And I always go back to there are things that I cannot control, and then there are things that I can, and I work from the place of what I can control. I influence what else I can, and then I have to let the rest go with acceptance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's very important. So before we continue on this stress topic, can you tell us what, which situation or what it is that started causing you stress in your life, and then we take it from there?
So I think I think there's lots of things that I'm now realizing that are way before the journey that I thought was my stress journey. For example, I had a lot of beliefs. We all have beliefs. We grow up. Our parents and carers and community and schooling and all of those, our peers, they all influence us, our working lives, and they all kind of give us programming that we take in and that form our beliefs. And so I think I had a lot of self-limiting beliefs. I think I had a lot of messages that I didn't question or test. I just took them as true, and that sort of formed some of the decisions that I made that led to some of the stressful situations. And so right now, if I sort of skip to the end first, to this end, what I'm working through is, what are those beliefs that are limiting me and holding me back and causing my decisions, and are they serving me? And if they're not, then replacing those beliefs. And that's what my work is now. And when I started my stressful journey, then which was in my 20s, actually, so a long time ago, I grew up believing that I would married and have children. That's what you did. I had a lot of conditioning around that. And then I ended up in an abusive marriage, which I managed after some years to leave. And I moved into another relationship fairly, maybe within a couple of years, fairly quickly afterwards. And because of my trust things that I didn't deal with, I didn't deal with any of that emotion. I just went, yeah, I'm fine. I'm done. I'm out. And then I moved on, and I didn't, without looking at how that felt, and without processing it. Then I moved into a relationship that became my second marriage, and I had a lot of similar of the emotional abuse, because I'd chosen the same way, because I didn't change my system, my patterns. And I ended up raising 4 children with that man, who is now my late husband, because he ended up having early onset of Alzheimer's in his 40s. And so I ended up having to stay and care for him, so that the children didn't have to, care for their father. He didn't have other family. And so I created a life that was based on all of my labels. My dog is here with me, next to me, if you can hear that. I created a life that's just based on my labels. And so I was a wife and a mother and a daughter and a sister and a businesswoman, and all of these labels. And what happened for me, and this is perhaps, although there are some really tragic things that have been events out of my control, what happened for me was very much about, that I lost sight of who I am. and what my inner voice is telling me and what I wanted or believed or needed. And I think for a lot of women, and not only women, but especially women in most cultures, we do the majority of the caregiving and all of those things. And I also had two very active businesses that were, very successful, but very stressful because I was traveling, all over. So I ended up being a carer. And when my late husband passed away, which was in 2019, it was also the year that my youngest was leaving home. And my late husband had made a huge mess of the finances. So I had to leave my home. I had to move. And I had to do all of that with, I live in the UK, but I'm Canadian. So I didn't have family around me. And I got in a car accident and I had neck and spine injury. So I couldn't do very much physically either. And I just went back to kind of what I would have called my normal everyday life in 2020 for about 6 weeks. And then the pandemic hit. And so I think there are lots of things during that time. I survived breast cancer, so I went through 5 years of having treatment and getting the all clear. So there were lots and lots of things that occurred in my life. But I wouldn't say, although they absolutely are stressful times, I wouldn't say now that I'm through that and we're in 2022, that I wouldn't say that that's what my stress was. My stress came from the fact that I didn't know what I wanted or who I was. I didn't take care of myself because I was taking care of everyone else. And I didn't access or allow feelings. So I stayed very much in what we tend to call masculine energy of doing and results and drive and being very busy and never acknowledging my feelings, keeping them all pushed down. And then, of course, when the pandemic hit, it exploded.
Mm-hmm.
And I had quiet time and I was cut off from people. And all of a sudden, I had to face all of those things and figure out who I am. And so for me, that was the most stressful part, is the control. We were talking about control the controllables. I had control over feeling those feelings and I chose not to. I had control over, making time for myself and I chose not to. And I did a lot of those things that I had complete control over and chose not to. And it came back to hit me in the face.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Pandemic brought a lot of things out of people indeed. You think that if the pandemic didn't happen, you would have continued like you were before that, and like you said, not acknowledging your feelings and kind of like not paying attention to maybe trying to find out who you were and what you wanted?
Well, so I would have tried, is the honest answer. I would have tried. I would have had to face up to who I am because I didn't have children at home, so I wasn't so busy. I wasn't, caring for my late husband, so I wasn't so busy. I would have had at some point to, to grieve and to let go and to adjust to, even simple things like, what do I like to eat for dinner? Not considering anyone else. So I would have had to figure out some of those things, but I would have tried to hide from the feelings and from processing the things that I didn't want to face. Because I didn't know how to, like, what would happen if I let all of that out. I felt like I wouldn't like that. That's kind of what was holding me up. I felt like I now know that when you release that, it fills, with space and joy and all kinds of other things. But I couldn't imagine what that was because I hadn't really ever allowed that experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And how was it actually when you started working on your feelings?
Oh, it was terrible. Absolutely terrible, because my imposter syndrome shows up in that I don't like to ask for help and I don't like to accept help when it's offered. Now, I'm really good at that now. I still cringe inside, but I do ask for and accept help now. But it's been a really strong work in progress. And I think what I never would have done was I probably wouldn't have started an online business the way I have now with, helping people to build confidence. I would have stuck with the corporate stuff because that's what I knew. I think if the pandemic didn't hit and I didn't go into that, I wouldn't have had to do the healing. See, that's one of the things that I didn't realize is that having an online business, you have to face all kinds of blocks. If you're trying to sell online, you've got to face your money blocks, your fear of success blocks, your all kinds of beliefs about selling. You've got to face up to all of those. If you're healing online, then you've got to be doing your own work and you've got to be doing your own clearing and working with your own healers. So I didn't appreciate all of those because in the corporate world, you can go in, you can help them achieve results, and you can leave. And you don't have to deal with all kinds of mindset blocks that really come up when you're in the world of, working in a business to consumer kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that is true. Going back to the asking for help, what are the steps that you took for you to be able to, you did say you're not all the time you're feeling 100% comfortable with asking help, but at least it's getting there. But then
Yeah.
what were the steps that you took for you to feel a little bit comfortable with asking for help?
Okay, so this is where my cabaret world came in, was because what I started to realize is that for me, it was definitely a symptom of imposter syndrome. It wasn't that I feel like I'm going to be found out like a lot of people experience imposter syndrome. It was much more around, I don't want people to know that I'm not as strong as I want to be or seem to be. And so there was very much a facade of that kind of strength. And uh, this is where I started to recognize that this is me talking to myself with my inner critic, and I unquestioning let that voice say those things. And so many of us talk very badly to ourselves, the way we would never talk to our friend, and we would never let somebody else talk to our friend. And then we talk to ourselves that way. Now, most people will have heard that before, but what I started to realize was that I have a choice about that voice, because when I'm about to perform on stage, I perform in 9-inch heels. I perform in costumes that I feel strong and powerful and fierce. And I have a message that I unapologetically share. And so, what I started to do was do that work around, how do I access that voice? And how do I use that voice to kind of almost replace that imposter voice that says, oh, what will they think of you? And they're going to know that you're weak, or they're going to feel sorry for you, and all of those kind of things. What I started to do is make friends with that and say, thank you, because that voice is there to protect us and it's never going to go away, but we can control when and how much influence it has. So I started to say, yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate the warning, but I've got this, because I've got this other voice, my cabaret persona, that I can tap into, and that is we've got this. We are so doing this, and I started to be able to access those things, to be able to get some momentum going. And once I had some momentum going, then I could go back and revisit, what is it that I want? What is it that I really, really want? But I had to quiet that voice first. And I had to take some action and get some momentum going. And then that gave me the confidence to really explore who it is that I am, and what it is that I want, and what it is that I require, and the direction that I'm going to take with my own life.
Yeah. I know that talking about it now, for us to hear it, it sounds like very easy, but I
Oh,
know it's not an easy process, and it takes work every day again.
it does. It really does. And that's why I'm really honest. I think, I will ask for help. I try a little bit first, so that I feel like I'm enabled, and and I'm learning, and sometimes I figure it out. And then I'll ask for help. I'll certainly accept help if it's offered. And then I try and, work with them so that I understand it, so that I can gain some learning and growth, but also some independence. And there are some things that I just won't ever be able to do, partly because I don't want to, and partly because they're not in my expertise, and I let other people get to follow their passion, and that's their expertise, and we support one another through those things. And so, technology is one of the things. I let somebody else do technology because they love doing that, and I don't. And it's beautiful because it means that I get to look at it in a different way. It's not about my weakness. It's just about calling upon somebody else's passion, because otherwise, you and I in the coaching world, if nobody else ever reached out for help, then we would never have any clients, because there'd be nobody to coach. So it's a really
Correct.
beautiful reciprocity to sort of saying that there is nothing, there's nothing weak, there's nothing bad, there's nothing wrong with asking for help and admitting and enjoying the support that's accessible to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. How long it took you actually to reach here to be able to feel comfortable with asking for help? Because I can imagine that there are different indeed steps. Everybody has their own process of if we're talking about asking for help, for example, that they will reach at one point to feeling a little comfortable with asking for help.
Yeah, so rather than just kind of making it like a rule across life, for me it was more about uh, little steps. When I had breast cancer, I had to have help. I mean, I just had to. That I was there wasn't that I wasn't capable of managing it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't talk to people about it. So in hindsight, if I was going back, I would accept help on the emotional side as well, but certainly on the physical side of things. I asked for and looked for help around my husband's mental health with dementia, and I had to accept help there. But I still was struggling with stuff in the house. So I wasn't trying to do like the whole thing once, because control nature would have meant that I would have tried to control everything by having all these people in there, and I would have been running a whole business on just getting stuff done. So it was really very much about little bits and pieces. When my husband passed away, I had to ask people for help and advice because I didn't know how to do some things. And then once I had help there, then I had to allow people to help me to move, for example. And so I I really had to kind of do it step by step in little pieces. I didn't just kind of go, okay, I'm open for help. So I would say probably about, I mean, we're nearly 3 years in now, and I'm still
Mm-hmm.
kind of getting over that. I had to ask for that help, but it's okay. It's a good thing. But I still have that initial, because it's been a long
Yes.
time. It's been 3 years of doing this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, and like you said, because you have been in a particular pattern for a very long time, it's not going to go 1, 2, 3, and it's taking time. Yeah.
It
And
is, and
I,
it's hard, and
yeah.
it's painful, and
Mm-hmm.
that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what you said about the your strength and your weaknesses, that you when you're working on your own process, it doesn't mean that you have to be able to do everything, even when you're asking for help. But you have to indeed acknowledge for yourself that, okay, these things I'm good in, I would like to be able to do them, master, however you want to put it. And these things might not like to do, or I'm not so strong in, and those things I leave for other persons. I like that. That is indeed part of the process as well. And yes,
Yeah.
not at the
I think the other
you.
thing, I think the other thing that we do, you know, when we're feeling particularly stressed, is we do things that try and avoid that feeling of discomfort. And if we can just allow that feeling and observe that feeling, that's another piece of work that I do, you know, with journaling, with having, you know, calm time, which sometimes is meditative, sometimes is just breathing, sometimes is just, you know, uh, having, you know, I don't know, lighting candles, all kinds of different things that I do. I kind of just follow whatever it is that I need. Sometimes it's just about flicking through things on social media just to kind of have a bit of downtime if my energy is low. But you know, it's okay to allow those feelings when they come up, for them to be horrible, terrible, just really disruptive feelings, and to go, oh, that's interesting. And then you can let it go. But what I used to do was fight it and go, no, 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 and shove it back down and try and ignore it. And it will come back up. It
Yeah.
absolutely will.
In those cases that it coming back up, what do you do?
So in those cases, I have a very, that's when I start to control my internal dialogue, and I make sure that I'm in a very calm place. And that's when I start to say, okay, I'm noticing that my last week, my mother passed away a year ago. So last week was the anniversary.
Okay.
And
Condolences.
thank you. Thank you. But you know, it was kind of a milestone of, I've now lived every one of every day of the year. And it's sad, but that's okay. Because, you know, what's interesting for me is that until 2019, I didn't cry ever.
Okay.
I just couldn't. I couldn't access it. Because if I accessed it, I knew this whole thing was going to come up like a volcano. Because I knew that it was all pressed down. I just didn't acknowledge it. I just stayed away from it. And so now I'm kind of like, well, that's a sad day, and I can observe it, and I can appreciate it, and I can let it go. And it comes up sometimes, and I can let that go. But you know, you have to acknowledge, it's a bit like confidence is one of those things where it's not a destination. You know, you don't just kind of become stress free and then that's it. It's a bumpy road, right? And all we're trying to do is learn to allow and experience and then grow from that. And the aim for me is to not go down so low when I go low, and not stay down there when I go down there. You know, it's kind of like this, and then I want to come back up. I'm not rushing it, but I don't want to end up staying down there where, you know, I'm at the point of it's a whole thing just to get out of bed, you know.
Yeah. 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 And it's like it's yeah, it's especially when we're talking about stress and our emotions, it's not indeed it's not easy to saying that, okay, I'm going to start working on it, and these are the steps I'm going to take. And especially when you're trying to start doing it on your own, because it's a situation you have been in it, you have been conditioned how to handle for maybe for the stressors not to have too much impact on you, but then in other areas or other aspects of your life without you realizing and paying attention, it still have influence on your life.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not easy to realize that I'm the one that have to start working on it for the situation to change. We thinking that, oh, but it is that person or whatever is happening there is what causing the stress. So that is the thing that have to change.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's back to that control the controllables, right?
Yeah.
It's back to that bit about, okay, but what can I control? I can't control your responses, but I can influence them.
Yeah.
You know, and And, I think when we get down into that, kind of fight, flight, or freeze kind of panic state, it's very hard, to see choices because our peripheral vision kind of, cuts off and we don't see other choices. And so by kind of allowing and opening, then we start to be able to get into a more nutritive state of seeing other choices and other responses. And, the language patterns of they made me do this. Nobody made you do anything. You choose your response. You have a response ability.
Mm-hmm.
And that choice is something, you if somebody causes your anger, then you have to think about, well, how are you viewing that? Did they really cause it? Or are you choosing to see it that way? What choices did you have in that situation? Could you walk away? Could you stay and use a different response? And there have been times when I choose deliberately the wrong response. I know that if I say this, it's going to cause an argument, but I choose to say it because I did not consider my response. And considering my response is one of the choices that I can make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we've all done that. Mm-hmm. We've all gone, yeah, I know it's a bad thing to say, but I wanted to at the time. But we do have a choice. And for me, it's that bit about pause, take a breath, and consider.
Yeah.
And then respond instead of reacting all the time.
Yeah, correct. And it's a work in progress because our first reaction is to go and react and say whatever's in our mind. But indeed, it's a process that we have to keep on reminding ourselves that, okay, what will be the reaction from the other person? Is that what I want? Or how else do I want to be reacting to get let me call it a positive reaction from the other person? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. At the beginning, you said about you are doing the Confidence podcast and that it started as a hobby. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it might correlate with everything that you are going through in life and how you reach there?
Yeah. So I woke up one day about 6 years ago now, and I decided that I needed to do cabaret, and I didn't know what it was. I just had this whisper, and I knew that I needed to find out what it was. So I looked it up. I went to a studio that was having a taster, and we were doing some very simple, what's called body tracing, where we take our hand and we trace our body. And so we were just tracing our arm, and I wanted to cry. And that's the moment when I realized that I do not comfortably take up space. Now, bear in mind, I was running large conferences all over the world for major corporations. So I'm used to being in front of an audience. And yet, as me, without all my materials and all of my props, I was not comfortable to own my space. I wasn't comfortable to be heard just as me. I wasn't comfortable to, really express what I wanted to express. And so I signed up for cabaret lessons right there and then. And for the first 2 weeks, I cried. And everybody kept saying, why do you keep doing this? And I knew that I really needed to connect my mind with my body. And so when the pandemic hit and we started Confidence Through Cabaret, it was about sharing that message that we don't have to shrink, that we don't have to, fall victim to our blocks and our beliefs, that we are not our circumstances or our situations, and that we have a right to express our views, to share our message, to own our space unapologetically, and to really, be heard, not by everybody, but, you have to get good at being okay with people not being okay with you. It's the same when you go on a stage. There will be some people on a stage, like, maybe music, you like some and you don't like some. You have to get good at being okay with people not being okay with you. And so I wanted to show those lessons as a way of people being able to move into a space of being who they are and loving who they are and feeling good about that and just
Mm.
really enjoying their own self-acceptance and then finding their people.
Yeah. Nice, nice. And so then on your podcast, you just talk with people about how they are building their own confidence.
Yes. So
Oh,
the
nice.
podcast kind of started by accident. We started a website which is like a members site, and every month
Mhm.
we have people that put up a masterclass, and that anybody who's a member can then watch any of the masterclasses and work through the workbooks and find their own kind of path through the materials. And we had so much material that I didn't want to be one of those websites where people go on it and there's so much information that they're overwhelmed, because when you're looking for things, the last thing you want is too many choices. So some of them we created into kind of audio and video on YouTube and podcasts, and then the podcast has just beautifully bloomed into all things confidence. And so people share their stories about how they build confidence and uphold confidence. And you know what's really interesting? When I ask people to do the podcast as a guest, a lot of people say, I don't have anything to tell you about confidence. I'm just a 4 times New York Times bestseller. And I'm like, how is that not a confidence story? But a lot of people sort of say, well, I do my thing, but that's not really confidence.
Mhm.
It's just that's what I'm good at. And it's just a very interesting journey to kind of hear people's stories and hear how that kind of confidence has come about and how it's expressing itself and what the learning is from that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, indeed, confidence plays a important role in lives, and yes, it's not something that we paying attention to it. It's like you said, we doing our thing, and we don't relate it to having confidence or not.
No, and I think, confidence isn't the only answer, but it is supportive in times when when we're under stress. Just coming back to our topic for today, because when we're under stress and it feels like things are closing in, then the confidence gives us that ability to pull out of that mindset and say, it's not okay right now, but it's going to be okay. I
Mhm.
don't know how to do something, but I know that I will figure it out. And confidence kind of gives us that momentum to being able to find our way out of those times that are difficult or stressful.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. That's true. So, Heather, I enjoying all the information that you're giving, and also indeed about your personal story and from where you came and how you reach here, and also especially your podcast about confidence. So that's really interesting.
Thank you.
And as a advice or tips, or maybe as a last closing thing, what you would want to share with the audience?
Yeah, so my main thing is control the controllables. I already told you that I live by that. That is so precious if you can say these things are out of my control and let them go. But I would say, be very gentle with yourself wherever you are. Don't compare yourself to someone else's journey, because one of the language patterns that I kept coming back to was, and it was actually my daughter that taught me not to say it, but in one of the language patterns was always, well, other people have it worse. It could be worse. It could be worse. I still have a home, and I still have some, my health, and and I would say, don't compare yourself to others. Either they have it better than me or they have it worse than me. How you feel is valid, and what you are experiencing is happening for you. and that doesn't always feel like that. But if you can
Mhm.
get to that place, that little piece of oasis that says, this is happening for me, and someday I'm going to know what that lesson is, and and then it feels a lot different than it's happening to me and the world is coming in on me. If you can spin that and sort of say, okay, there's lesson in this, there's joy in this moment, there's and just little gentle steps as you move forward, and pull yourself along until you're at a place where you can walk and run and then fly.
Yes, yes. Thank you. That is very well said, very nice. I like it. It's indeed what we have to try to keep in mind, indeed, when we walking through our lives. So that is very important. So,
And you
Heather,
don't have to walk alone. You never have to walk alone. Like, there are always people that are around you that will support you, that you can reach out to always.
yes, yes, we have to be open and willing to see that they want to help us honestly. Yeah, I agree with that. So, Heather, thank you very much. I enjoyed it, and thank you for being my first guest of this year. And I appreciate what you shared with us. And thank you again for being part of this. And
Thank
then
you.
also the audience, thank you very much for sharing your evening with us. And I would like to say everybody to have a good evening, and we will see you with our next episode.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
good evening. You most welcome.